So again, just to give this a little introduction, this is Fredrick, Kenniston at Axiom, and we're doing a group training session on Microsoft Office Importer for MicroStation. Now, and I'm going to show you how to use the program, different places to find things about the program as far as help and how it works, and different things you can do with it in different settings, that sort of thing. And also show you where you can go, where you can learn more about the program on your own, and also use what I'm going to show you to be able to help others learn to use the program as well. And a couple of things I'm going to show you are kind of like behind the scenes of how it works, which will help you understand why the program works the way it does, that sort of thing. And we've got, we did get some stragglers. So we now got 15 people. So thanks everybody for attending. And what I'm showing you on the screen right now is MicroStation V8i Select Series 10. Now the things I'm going to show you are also applicable to the MicroStation Connect version of the program, or V10 version. And many of the things that I also show you are also applicable to the AutoCAD version. This program has 3 general versions, MicroStation, AutoCAD, and also a Revit version. Now, Revit is a bit more different because we had to care for things differently in the Revit or BIM environment, but the basic operations in the Revit version are the same as well. Just to give you a little background on the program, it's Microsoft Office Importer for MicroStation has been around since 1996, and where it was developed for an early version of MicroStation, which we will just refer to as the V7 format. Then when MicroStation V8 came out, we had to update the program because they changed the internal guts of MicroStation files at that point, so we had to care for that change. Plus, they expanded the amount of memory that each bit of a file in the V8 format could utilize. And then we had to do a similar thing for V10 when they expanded that to a 64-bit environment. So the program's been around a long time, so it's got a couple of decades worth of development underneath it. And in the interface that I'm in now in MicroStation V8i, when you install the program, you'll get this Axiom menu selection here off your main MicroStation menu, up here in the upper left where I've got my cursor. Now when I click on that menu, the first section of it is our MicroStation Productivity Toolkit for V8. This is a package of programs from Cell Manager down to Version Manager. It's 16 programs, and Microsoft Office Importer happens to be one of those programs. And if you don't have Toolkit, it doesn't matter because these programs are also individually purchasable. And so you may not have the full toolkit. You may just have Microsoft Office Importer and maybe 1 or 2 other programs that you see here of ours. That's totally fine. In order to run the program, you either click it here on the menu, and then it will run this toolbar, which I've got here kind of now towards the center of the screen. Or by default, it will also install in such a way that when you run MicroStation, it will just run the toolbar. And if you go to Workspace Configuration, under the variable called ms_DGN apps, short for applications, let me get down there and I'll show you this. Notice it's got this expansion here for C program files x86 Axiom V8 Office and then office.ma. MA is short for MDL application, which is the MicroStation Development Language application. And that is the program Microsoft Office Importer. So by default, when you install it, it should install in that variable a path to Microsoft Office Importer so that when you run MicroStation or open MicroStation, it should just run the toolbar automatically. If it's not set up that way and you want it set up that way, then you can just add this path to this variable and then it should run it. And if you need help with that, I'll show you later where to get technical support assistance where you can set it up that way as well. Now back to the toolbar. The name of the program, Microsoft Office Importer, gives you a clue of what it does. And it gives you the ability to import Microsoft Word and Microsoft Excel files, or portions of them, into your MicroStation file. And you can paste that data from Excel or Word into a design model, a drawing model, or a sheet model. It doesn't matter. And it will do so with very exact formatting. It has a bunch of other features and capabilities, which I'll show you as well here. So I'm going to go out to a sample Excel file. And this file actually comes with the program. And in fact, when you're going to learn to use the program, or you want to learn to use it, when you install it on the C drive, program data, Axiom, V8, Office, you see this folder, sample files. So these are the sample files that are installed with the program when you install it, and these are used in what's called a quick start guide, or the basic tutorial for the program, which I'll just take a moment to show you. So if you go to the last button, Settings, and then go Help, Contents, Quick Start. So this is the basic tutorial for the program, and it tells you where to find the sample files, which I just showed you, and that's for the V8 version. For V10 or Connect, it's the same sort of location, but instead of the V8 folder where I went to here, it's V10, Office, Sample Files. And those sample files are utilized in this tutorial, and it takes you, notice, it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different steps that teach you the basics of how to use the program. After that, it's the full documentation for the program with every button, option, setting, including troubleshooting data here on Chapter 16, where you can learn more about the program and handle things related to like character mapping and things of that nature. So that's the basics on where to find to get more help, basically. Now I'm going to go back to my sample files here that I'm using here for this to show you how to use the program. And I've already opened the Excel spreadsheet, which is here, and also the Word file. So I'll go to the Excel file first, and I'll highlight a section of it, right-click, and then I'll do a copy. When I go back to MicroStation, I'll click the first button here, which is Paste. When you click this, what it does is it analyzes the data that you copied from Excel or Word, and it converts it into MicroStation elements, because the data we're going to paste is MicroStation elements. And then when I click the button, it pastes the data, and I zoom in, and there's the paste. Now, this is MicroStation text elements and lines. And when I put my cursor over it, you'll see that all of the paste highlights. And you'll also see next to where my cursor is right now, it says it's a cell. By default, this data is pasted as a cell. It just groups the text and lines as a cell. And the reason we do that is just to make it easier so that after you've got the data pasted in, you can put your cursor over any portion of it, push your left mouse button down and grab it, and then you can pull it around to more precisely place it if you need to. Now, once you have this data pasted in, because it's MicroStation elements, if I give this design file to anyone and I do not include the source file that the paste came from, in other words, the Excel file in this case, it doesn't matter. The person that I give the MicroStation file to, they're going to see the pasted data without a problem, and they won't get any odd link errors or anything like that if they don't have the source file at all, because the paste does not rely on the source file once it's pasted into the MicroStation design file. But if you have Microsoft Office Importer, it is linked back to the source file through the program, and I'll show you what I mean. If I click this button, Edit, if you just have one paste in the MicroStation file, it's fine. It'll find the source file and open it in its application. If you have more than one paste, which I'll show you in a little bit, you have to select the paste that you want to edit, and then it will find the source file for that particular paste. So I'll click Edit now. It opens the source file, which is the Excel file in this case, and then it highlights the exact pasted area, so you don't have to go looking around for it. From here, I'll make a couple of obvious changes. I'll change the color of this text, and then I'll change the information in this cell in the upper left, and then I'll save the file. And the reason I save it is because it deals with the file as it's written to disk. So if you made a change and you haven't saved it yet, if you try to update the paste based on the change, it's not going to recognize that a change has been made to the file. So after you make the change to the source file, you must save it to disk. Now from there, if I go to this button, Manage, I can click the Update button on it, and based on the changes I made in the source file, it will update the paste accordingly, as you see. This dialog box gives you a couple of other things as well, which I'll point out. This is the name of the source file. If the file name is changed or if it's moved on disk, you click Select, navigate out, and you can pick the file up again, and then click Open. It'll reset the link to the file. You also see that it says update automatically when the design file opens. This is the default for both, or I should say, the default for both the MicroStation and AutoCAD version of this program is to update without asking you at all. So when you open the design file or the CAD file or the drawing file in case of AutoCAD, it'll check the source files, check the exact pasted areas, and if it sees changes, it'll just update the paste without any intervention from you at all. Now for the Revit version, we modified that, and the default for for the Revit version is to prompt you. So you open a Revit project and it says, hey, I found pasting to be updated. Would you like to do so, yes or no? And if you say yes, it'll update all of them. If you say no, you can still manually update the ones you want later, which I'll show you more in this version, in the MicroStation version as well, in a little bit. You can also lock the pasted elements in the MicroStation version. And when you do that, that would just prevent any inadvertent or on purpose editing of the elements of the paste directly in MicroStation. However, if you have that turned on, you could still update the paste based on changes made in the source file. Again, it just prevents you from editing the elements directly. By the way, there is a question and answer area. So as I go through this, if you think of questions, you can post them in that question and answer area. And then the person that's assisting me with this webinar, Paul, he'll direct my attention to the questions and we'll get them answered for you as well. So that was, to move back to this dialog box, that was lock the pasted elements. And then you see here is the option to group the pasted elements into cells. This is actually in the settings, which I'll show you in a little bit. And this is the default for the MicroStation version. Now under Excel attributes, top left cell, bottom right cell, this is the range of cells that the paste is composed of in Excel. And this is this data for the range of cells. That's how we keep track of the pasted area in Excel. It's a little different in Word, which I'm going to show you in a little bit. But that, in this case for Excel, is just the range of cells. And with those letter and number combinations, we can keep track of the scope of the paste. Now, with that data there, though, in those fields, you could use these fields in the following fashion. Notice on the far right, I have my remarks column. Now, if I edit the source file and I insert a new column, for example, and save the file, when I go back, if I try to update the paste again, and this time it's going to push this remarks column outside the original pasted area, as you see there. So with these fields like this, I could adjust the scope of the paste on the fly, in this case, adjusting the bottom right cell so that it'll pick up the data that was part of the paste initially. And notice I've got my remarks column back now. You could also use these fields to expand or contract the scope of the paste, or even just move the scope of the paste if you needed to do anything like that. The tag that's created. Yeah, I got a question from Kevin asking about a tag that was created. Can you give me more data? There's a construction element that's created. I'm not sure what you're referring to regarding tag, though. Kevin? Oh, yeah, in Microsoft Word, I think you're talking about the bookmark. Is that correct, Kevin? Just a second, clarifying that. Tag in MicroStation. Yeah, there's not a tag in MicroStation. There's a construction element, but I'll go over. I think that's what you're referring to. That's what I'll go over, sure. All right, so that's the basics of pasting and updating an Excel paste here. Now, in relationship to the questions that I got from Kevin here, I'm going to point something out related to that. So I'm going to adjust my view here. And I go up to the upper corner of this paste. Now, if I go into my view attributes here, off the secret menu, notice I've got constructions turned on. So with that turned on, I'm going to go and grab my paste here. Since it's grouped as a cell, I'm going to drop status, meaning I'm going to take it, just drop it to its component elements. So I'll drop complex Say yes. And now I can move the individual elements. So I'm going to move these two lines here. And notice when I zoom in a little bit, you can't see it, but I'm going to select it. This is a construction element. Now this construction element is placed when you paste the data from Microsoft Office Importer into the design file that holds the settings and the link information related to the paste. So if I right click over that and go to properties, you'll see that it's got different data. So you're not going to see a lot of things about it, but notice it's a construction element. And the way you can see the data about it, though, as far as actually, if I go to point, it might expand the data. Nope, it doesn't. That's fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to Microsoft Office Importer. And under this button, List, oops, I think I broke the link here. I'm going to do drag session, drag, do it again. There we go. Let's see, do I got it now? Yeah. Go back to list of links. Da-da-da. There we go. So now I'll say display info border. Now when I click that, notice, let me adjust my view here a little bit. So it draws a border around the paste. And in this case, it's green, it's dashed, that sort of thing. You can set that up through the settings, which I'll show you more in a minute. But it gives you the link information up here in the top left in a block. Now this link information is stored in that little construction element that I told you about. It'll have the name of the source file, whether the link is set to automatically updating or not, and then last updated date. Oh, tags? Okay, let me go. Hang on, I just got a clarification from Kevin on tags. Tags define. Yeah. So the OLE link. This now I see what Kevin was referring to. I thought I was referring to Word file. So these are OLE links that are part of the tag set that is comprised or saved in that data with the construction element that I was showing you. So if those are being deleted, yes, as Kevin was asking about, if people were deleting these tags, then it could cause an issue where might not be able to find the data related to the paste. Thanks for the clarification, Kevin. I appreciate it. And then I have another question. How does the font and text height work with Axiom? I'll show you that here a little bit. I'll go into the settings. That was from Jamil. So I'm going to backtrack a little bit since I was working on answering Kevin's question here. So those tags that you saw related to the paste I did, you wouldn't want to delete because that could cause problems with the data being found later if you're trying to then update a paste. So now I'm going to go back and adjust my view. So that was the basics of pasting Excel into a MicroStation file. I'm going to go to a Word file now. And I'm going to grab a section here. I'm going to start with general notes and then go down here through this table data. Copy that. And notice it says it has different types or formats of text here. It's got different fonts, bold, italic, underlined text, numbered paragraphs, indented paragraphs, bulleted paragraphs, also table data, and copied that. I'm going to go paste that in as well. Then when I zoom in, you'll see the formatting that was applied based on what I copied and pasted. Now in Word, it's a little different from Excel. So Excel, we keep track of the range of cells that the paste is composed of. But in Word, we don't have that luxury because it's not a grid pattern with, like the columns and the cells are numbered and lettered in Excel. We don't have that luxury in Word. So here's what we do. If I go back to Word here, and I go to Insert, Bookmark, you'll see there's a bookmark here, OLE_link1. So what happens is when we copy the data and then paste it into MicroStation, what what happens is in conjunction with Microsoft Office Importer, is it creates that bookmark, Ole link, and saves that into the Word file, and that's saved with the pasted data in MicroStation to keep track of the scope of the paste in Word. In other words, unlike Excel, where we have the range of cells from the top left cell, bottom right cell, in this case, we have a bookmark. Now, the reason I'm pointing that out is this. If I want to add data to the bottom of the paste, like right here where you see this last, we're using kind of Latinized text here, nib, N-I-B-H. If I want to add data to the end of the paste, if I don't care for where the end of the bookmark is, and I have this little, I'm not sure if you can see it here, this little gray bracket here on the end, that in my settings for Word, I had it show the scope of bookmarks, and that's what that little indicator is. But if I don't have that on, I can turn on my Home tab, show or hide white space or formatting characters. You'll see that's the last paragraph mark that defines the bottom scope of the paste, or where the scope of the paste ends. Now, if I want to add data, if I don't care for that, here's what people run into sometimes. Is if I go after it and I try to add data here and say this is new, this, if I could spell it would help, this is a new part of the paste, and save that, it's not within the scope of that bookmark. So when I go back to MicroStation and I say manage, click once again on that paste, and then say update, notice nothing happens. There's no additional data off the bottom of this paste that's added. And the reason why is because that new text that I added is outside the scope of the paste. So here's what you've got to do. I do this. I always go to where I ended the scope of the paste, turn on the formatting or white space characters, put my cursor insertion point right after the period there, and push once again on the enter key. That way I leave 2 null paragraphs, and then I add the new data here. Then you save your Word file, and now this data is within the scope of the bookmark. And if I go back to MicroStation again and go to Manage, click once again, say Update, notice now it finds that data. This is, I mean, it's not too common, but it happens often enough to where I wanted to cover that because, you know, people wonder why I added data to the end of my Word document, for example, or the end of my paste, and it didn't find it, and that's why. This is just something that you may have to care for if you're running into that sort of thing. All right, so that's the basics of pasting Word and Excel, and some of the ins and outs related to the scope of the paste and the Ole link and the construction element that keeps track of the settings and other data related to the paste, and also dealing with Word as far as the Ole object bookmark that's created as well. And now I'm going to go into the settings right now, and under pasting, notice this option here. It's split paste into columns. I'll be going over the text size and fonts and stuff here in a little bit. And I'll cover this, and then I'm going to go into 1 or 2 more things, and then I'll cover the settings in more depth here. So notice it says split paste into columns. I'm going to turn that on. What this allows you to do is to take multi-page paste where you can then split them into columns. This works for both Word and Excel both. And when you turn that on for Excel, it gives you the ability to repeat so many rows of header information over the top of each column that splits off. So when you turn that on, I'll put 5 here, and this is the first number of rows in the file, by the way. And then I'll save my settings, File, Save Settings. Click OK. Now this border representation I have here for this purpose. I'm going to go grab all of my Excel file this time. This is about 4 pages of information. Copy that. Go back and paste that data. Click once in the upper left, pull down to the right. It gives me a representation of where the columns are going to fall. If I move up or down, it adjusts the height. If I move left or right, it adjusts the spacing between the columns. And then with a second mouse click, it pastes the data. When I zoom in, you'll notice that it copied the header information over the top of the second and also the third column, like I told it through the settings. And each column, when I select my element selection tool, is selectable as well, individually selectable. That just makes it possible so that after you've got the data pasted in, you could grab the columns and more precisely place them if you need to. And if you do this, when you later do an update, if you need to on this particular paste, it'll leave the columns where you last placed them. So when you do an update, it won't shift them back to where they were first pasted. And this works for any paste as well, even if it's just one little section of a paste and not split into columns. Wherever you move it and leave it, that's where it'll stay. Even later, if you do an update, it won't move it to where it was first pasted. Now, another feature of splitting paste to columns is this. If I insert a bunch of rows in this Excel file and then update the paste to the point where when I do the update, if it sees that this last column would end up being taller than the columns before it, then what'll happen is on update, it will automatically, without any intervention from you, split off a new column if it needs to. Also, it'll do the opposite. So if I delete a bunch of rows in the scenario and it sees when I do the update that this last column is no longer needed at all, it'll remove that column if it needs to without any intervention from me. That'll work for both Word and Excel as well. Now, I'm going to go down a little bit to a cleaner area. I'm going to go out to my Word file. I'm going to do the same sort of paste here. I'm going to split the Word paste into columns. And I'm just going to show you one particular aspect of Word pasting that you might need to care for as well. Or if you're not aware of it, it's just something that you might need to know. So now I've grabbed all of it. This is also about 4 pages of data, and then I'll split that. And I'm working on a beta, so sometimes that first paste goes a little wonky here. Grab it again. It doesn't happen every time, but that's being worked on by the programming team right now. All right, so notice if I draw a line here, I'm going to go right about here, straight across. So you'll notice when I zoom in, you see how the columns are not quite the same height based on that line as a reference point. See how this one is lower than that one. Now, the reason I'm pointing that out is this, is there's an issue with how Microsoft Word handles things when data is copied to the Windows clipboard. So when you grab the data from Word and you do a copy and it holds temporarily that data in the Windows clipboard, that area of memory, then what'll happen, what we used to do with the program is when we pasted the data and splitting it into columns, if there was a numbered or lettered paragraph that crossed the bottom boundary of a column, like let's say this line was the bottom boundary. If we used to split those paragraphs so that part of the numbered paragraph would split at the bottom of the column and the other part of the numbered or lettered paragraph would be pushed to the top of the next column. The problem with that is the way the data is saved in the Windows clipboard is if you then split a paragraph like that, the following sequenced paragraphs, whether they were lettered or numbered, would lose their sequencing. And so the next one would restart the numbering at 1 or lettering at A. So based on that, that wasn't optimum. And that was only in the program for a little bit. So we modified that to where if a paragraph now crosses that bottom column boundary, and we go ahead and we don't split the paragraph at all, we just go ahead and push it up to the top of the next column. That way, if there's any sequencing, numbering, or lettering for your paragraphs, it'll retain the following numbered or lettered paragraphs will also then retain their sequencing. So it won't cause a problem that way. Again, it's just something that you may need to care for related to pasting, splitting paste into columns for Word. All right, so that was splitting paste into columns and some of the things related to that. And now I'm going to go into this button here, which is the list of links dialog box. I was here earlier to show you the displaying the info order data related to the first paste I did, so we could then see the data a little bit of the data that was stored in it from the construction element. But now here I've got a number of different pastes, and so this dialog box lists all of the Microsoft Office importer links that are in the design file. If I double click on a link, it will take me to the paste, so I don't have to go looking around for the paste. So wherever it is, it'll just take me right to it and window in on it. You'll also see under details, if it says Ole link at all, that's a Word paste. If it says anything else, it's an Excel paste with the sheet name and the range of cells that the paste is composed of from the Excel file. You also see under status, it'll tell you whether the paste is up to date or not, based on the file modification date and time of the source file written to disk. Now notice I've got two pastes here that are out of date. If you see one or more that are out of date, you can use either just one click of your mouse to select one, or you can use Shift or Control click to select as many as you want. Click the Update button. It'll check all the source files, all the exact pasted areas, and based on the changes, it'll update the paste accordingly. You can also display the info border, which I showed you earlier, and the information that displays for the info border, the border that it draws around it, and then the information in the block in the upper left, it's display only. It doesn't write that data to the design file, so it won't print or plot or anything like that. And its display is controlled to the settings, which I'll show you more on in a little bit, where you can change the color, the thickness of the line style. It's just a personal preference setting, really, since it doesn't write that data to the design file. You can also open the Manage dialog box from here. You can edit the source file from here. Update, I explained, and you can also delete paste, one or more, by selecting them with this Delete Paste button as well. Now I'll go into the settings. I'm going to answer first setting the font, and then I'll immediately go into the scale factor for the text size, which was asked by Jamil here. Then we got Christopher. I'm running into memory issues and crashing, trying to update tables. Okay, Christopher Garcia. What I would like at the end of this, I'm going to give you guys a support email address where you can send details of what you're running into to support@axiom.com, and we can help get your issue resolved. There shouldn't. Yeah, you're welcome. From my experience of working with the program I've been here at Axiom for 26 years now. If there's some memory issue or something like that, then it's probably something simple related to what's going on that support should be very easily able to help you resolve, just so you know. All right, so now in this dialog box, the settings dialog box, I'm going to go over text, but one thing I'll point out is at the top of it in the title bar, you see at the end of the text where it says Microsoft Office Importer Settings dash, then the next relative path that you see here, and then file name. This is the name of the currently loaded settings file. Now, the way the program is designed, you could save out different settings files for different projects. In other words, if they have different specifications or things like that, or different customers, and you can do this. You can go File, Save Settings As. Let's say I've got a settings file that has, for the most part, the settings that I want, but I want to tweak those for, let's say, a new project. So you can go File, Save Settings As, give it a name, like a customer name or a project name. Then notice the name of that file changes here in the title bar. Then I can go tweak the settings and save them as I go. And then I could use that settings file whenever I'm working on that project. If I need to work on a different project, I go File, Load Settings, load whatever settings file I have saved out for that particular project or customer. People will organize those settings files in different ways. Sometimes they'll be saved to a central folder, like out on a network drive or something like that, and which will be locked down by a project manager or CAD manager as read-only, so people can load the necessary settings files that they want, but they won't be able to edit them, sort of thing. And sometimes they'll also save a settings file for a particular project in a little subfolder specific for that project. So there's different ways, because of how you can save the settings files out, that you could organize it, which it's very flexible. It's however that would work best for you. You can do it that way. All right, so now text under font. So the default, which is what I've been working with, is the same fonts as the source document. That'll get you the most exact match, but you can also set a default font. Any font that's available to you in MicroStation fonts, TrueType fonts, and if you have AutoCAD installed, even AutoCAD fonts you could paste with. Now, one thing about pasting with default fonts that I'll point out is you could run into some font mapping issues. And I'm gonna just say that for the moment, because if you select a font like, let's say, engineering, but the fonts that you're using in Word or Excel are vastly different from the engineering font, then you might run into instances where text in cells in like Word tables or in Excel cells might overwrite the cells, and it might even cut off text depending on how vastly different the fonts are that are in Word or Excel compared to the font that you're pasting with the MicroStation. And I'm going to show you how to handle or mitigate font mapping issues like that here in just a second. First, before I get into that in depth, I'm going to go to the scale and answer the question that Jamil had about setting the text height and width. So scale is where you have it in the version that I've got. This version is pretty much what everybody has out there. But if you have a slightly older version, under text, you'll see a size tab, and it's the same setup. It's just in a different area of the settings here. So you'll either see a size tab here off the end, or it'll be scale here as the category. But it works the same way in either case, no matter where it's located in the interface here. Now, here I have an unnamed scale, and you see this height and width. These numbers here are just a ratio. And if I click calculate, this will make more sense what that means. So what you do is you put in the text, the point size of the text from Word or Excel, and then you tell it the height in master units and the width in master units that you need it to paste at MicroStation. Once you enter that data, it will automatically calculate the ratio necessary to bring this point size of text from Word Excel into MicroStation at this text height and width. So that's the ratio in this case for 10, it's 1 to 1. Now I'm going to click add here. I could add other scale factors, for example, and I'll click calculate again. And let's say sometimes I have a document that uses 12-point text. So I'll put 12 here, and I'll push my tab key. Notice it changes the scale factor. So in this case, I still, let's say, need it to come in at 10 and 10, but it's 12 on the point size on input. So now I'll click OK, and I'll actually change this text here to say 12 PT for 12 point. And then I'll save my settings file. I'll go File, Save Settings. Now, when I click OK, what's going to happen is this. Whichever scale factor I've got selected, when I click OK, that's the size it will use for the next paste I will do. If I forget that, it doesn't matter, because the secondary dialog box that displays when I do a paste, I can change that scale factor on the fly, and I'll show you what I mean. I'll go out to Excel again. I'll click Copy. Go back and I'll do a new paste here. Notice here in this dialog box, paste scale, so it's set to 12 PT, which was the one that I had selected when I clicked OK. But when I click this drop-down box, notice I can select any of the other scale factors that are available in that settings file. And so it'll change the scale on the fly. So that was there, and that was here. Notice I pasted with the engineering font, which I'm going to get into here in a second. So that's how you handle the scale factor, and that should answer your question, Jamil. All right, so now I'm going to go back to text font, and I've got the engineering font selected. I'm going to go back to my scale factor and choose my unnamed scale and save my settings. And now I'm going to go out and I'm going to grab a new section of my Excel file, and I'm going to cover font mapping issues. So here I'm using, you'll see at the top here, Arial font, and it's 10 point. So I'll copy that section, go back and paste that data. And when I zoom in, you'll see under station and offset, the text isn't overwriting the cells there, but it's actually crowding the lines a little bit. And what I mean by that is if I go back to my first paste where I use the same fonts as the source document, notice in these cells I have more padding on the sides of the text. A little easier to read. So when I go back to that paste that I just did with the engineering font that I used in this time, it has a little bit of a font mapping issue because I have less space around it. If the difference in the fonts is very dramatic, like going from whatever font I have in Word or Excel to the MicroStation font that I'm pasting within MicroStation, then this text could overwrite the border lines themselves, and it could even cut off some of the text if that difference is very significant. So here's what you do. There's a couple different ways to handle font mapping issues. The first is you would select a font in Word or Excel that matches as closely as you can gauge it with your eyes the font that you're pasting within MicroStation. This is most applicable when you're pasting with a MicroStation font or AutoCAD font. It's not going to be exact, but you'll get close, and then you can do a test paste, choosing the font in Word or Excel. See if that one works. Find one that might be a little closer, test paste with this until you dial that in a bit, and then save that font in the Word or Excel file and use that font over and over. That'll help mitigate a lot of the font mapping issues that you might have when you're pasting with a MicroStation or AutoCAD font. The other way is for Excel or for Word tables is this. If I edit my source file right now by going to the Edit button and go out to Excel, I can adjust the column widths and also the row heights as needed in the source file itself, save the file. When I go back then and click the Manage button and click Update, it's going to recognize that that change I made to the column width, the row height, is a change to the source file. And as a result, it'll update the paste accordingly, as you see here. So that's another way that you can mitigate or handle a font mapping issue where a text is overriding or even being cut off in relationship to the cells when you're pasting with a MicroStation or AutoCAD font. Now the last one, I'm gonna undo these here, the changes that I made in both MicroStation and Excel. 1, 2, 3. All right, so the last one is back in that same area of the text size or scale. Is I went over the height and width, but notice we have this other setting, which is called, or settings, height padding and width padding. In an earlier version, which some of you may have, where it's the size category, it may be called at the bottom of the tab there, non-text area height, non-text area width. What this does is this controls the padding, in other words, the blank area around the text inside the cell. This is for both Excel cells and also for Word tables. And the way you can use this is this. You might have to do some test paste, but I've done some test paste in the past to see how this would work. And I know from those tests, it was 3.0 and 1.5 that I utilized in order to dramatically change the look of this so I could see the text better when I do a paste. So I'll save those settings, click OK. Now I'll scroll down here a little bit, just to a cleaner area. Actually, let me zoom out a little bit too here. And now I'm going to do a paste of that same section. Let me see. Go back to Manage, Edit, and I'll click Copy. And this time I'll go and click Paste. Notice how much bigger it is now. If I go to see how the scope of the paste is now much bigger. If I click that and now zoom in, you'll see now look at all this nice space I have around my text. So if you're running into this with this last one in Word tables and Excel also, text that's overriding the borderlines a bit or it's even being cut off, then you can use those fields, do some test paste to see how it's going to change the formatting to make the text come in and the table come in relationship to one another the way you want, so you can clearly see the text and it's not cutting off text or overriding borderlines, that sort of thing. So those are the three ways that you can handle font mapping when you're pasting with a MicroStation or AutoCAD font both. So Jamil, what I covered just a little earlier and in combination with what I just showed you, does that help or answer your question related to the font and then the text height? Are you good with all that? Great. Okay, cool. All right, so now we're going to get into some of the other formatting here. Now notice when I go back to text, you have formatting here. And notice you have Symbology Settings here, and then you have other non-Symbology settings like importing stacked fractions and other things. And borders, you have a separate, similar thing. So you have Symbology, and then you have some other settings that are not symbology as well. Now, the reason I point these out is this. If you want to use symbology and some of these other settings, symbology you don't have to set. In other words, if you forget to set the symbology and you want to set it later, you can do so through the Manage dialog box, which I'll show you in a second. These other settings that are not symbology, though, in order for them to be applied to your paste, you want to make sure that they're turned on before you do your paste. If you do your paste and you forgot to set one of these the way you wanted, then you'd have to undo the paste and then redo it with those set. Now, related to the symbology, here's how you use those. So let's say I do a paste and I forgot that I wanted to actually set symbology settings for the paste that I did, with the text having separate symbology compared to the borders. So I'll do a paste without those settings. And now, if I go to the Manage tab here and click once again, notice it has a Symbology tab. This only exists in the MicroStation version, by the way. It doesn't exist in AutoCAD or Revit. So if you want symbology or an AutoCAD properties applied, attributes properties applied to the text and the border lines in AutoCAD, you'd have to undo the paste and then redo it. But in MicroStation, we give you the luxury of going to the Symbology tab, and then notice it's got text and separate borders here. So you can turn on the color. Let's say you needed the text to come in green. Why? Just because. And then borders, you needed them to come in as, let's say, light blue, and you needed them to have a thickness of 3. Now, the way these apply, and this is also in the settings that I showed you, is they apply to all of the text and separately all of the borders. So if you want different colored text in different places, and you want different thicknesses of lines in different places, you wouldn't want to use these settings here. You would want to set those settings in the Excel file, and then the paste, the way it's converted, it will duplicate those as close as it can when you do your paste in MicroStation. But again, here, and also in the symbology settings in the settings, when you apply them, they apply to all of the text and separately all the borders. So if I click Apply Now, notice what I just did. So that's applying symbology. Then when I go back to the settings, under borders, notice it says import border lines. The default is to import border lines as they exist in the source file. That means 2 things. Make them the thicknesses as close as you can and bring those in. And also, if there are border lines drawn, draw them. If there aren't border lines drawn on the cells, don't draw them. Or you can say always. That means whether those border lines or not, it's going to draw border lines around the cells in an Excel paste or cells in a Word table. And the default will be the thinnest line if there's no borders. It'll be the thinnest line related to what it can bring in. In Excel, it has 3 different line thicknesses. So this will use the thinnest one if you use always and there's none drawn around the cells. Then never, this will just bring in the text-based data. It won't draw any of the border lines at all. Scale I went over. Pasting, this is where you split paste into columns. And notice at the bottom here, this is where it groups the pasted elements into cells. That was the default option that I showed you in the Manage dialog box earlier, and that's where this comes from. Linking, by default, it creates a link back to the source document, and it sets it to update automatically when the design file opens. Now, if you have a scenario where you just want to paste the data in and you don't want it linked back to the source file at all, in other words, you just want to either maintain that pasted data within the design file, or you don't want to worry about it afterwards, you just need to paste the data in and you're done, either way, then you can do that like this. You can turn this option off and then do your paste, and you can still use every other setting in the program. You know, you can set the text, you can set the or the font, you can set the text size and split paste in the columns, that sort of thing. It just won't be linked back to the source file when you do that. I got another question here, which I'll answer in just a second. Then when you're done with doing that paste, you'll go File, Load Settings, just reload your settings file, and then it'll reset that link. So later when you do a paste, it'll automatically be linked back as well. So I have a question. Is this the scaling of text as size of border change the scale of drawing? Yeah, Yeah, I haven't dealt with that myself a bit, but when it comes to the scale of text, there is a method for doing that. What I'm going to do, Mike, is I'm going to get some data from the head of Axiom support, because I know there's he has data related to that particular thing, and I'll make that available to others too that attend this. I'll just have to get the data in writing from him and then have that sent out to you. That's all, because I myself haven't dealt with that. I haven't had to deal with that directly myself here, as far as saying I've got a border that's set to 40 scale for a 40 scale drawing, and I need my text at a certain size. How do I do that? I just have to do that calculation, so it would take me a short bit to figure it out. I just don't happen to have it off the top of my head, but I will get it to you. All right, so updating. Now, I mentioned earlier that the default for the MicroStation and AutoCAD version is to update all automatic paste without asking. So you close the design file or the drawing file in AutoCAD. Next time you open it, checks the source files, checks the exact pasted areas, and then based on the changes it sees, it updates the paste without any intervention from you. And that would be all the pastes that need to be updated based on changes made in the source file. Or you can say, ask before. Oh, by the way, this setting is a settings file setting, which I should mention, meaning whatever's saved in the settings file for this setting, the next time you close MicroStation and then you open it, when Microsoft Office Importer runs, that's the setting that will be in force. So the default again will just be this first one will be in force. So the second one says, ask before. That will prompt you. This is the default for the Revit version. Revit users wanted more control over that, so we changed the default for them. But you could use that in MicroStation AutoCAD if you want. You just change it and then save your settings. And this will prompt you. So you open the design file or drawing file, and it says, hey, I found paste that could be updated. Would you like to do so, yes or no? If you say yes, all the ones that need to be updated will do so. If you say no, then you can manually update them one at a time through the Manage dialog box, or you can update multiple ones at a time through the List of Links dialog box, both of which I showed you earlier. And then at the bottom here, don't update any automatic paste at all. That will leave them alone when you open the design file or drawing file. And you can still then manually update them later if you wanted to through the List of Links dialog box or the Manage dialog box as well. List of links. When you double click on a link, it says the default handling for it is to fit in the view, which I showed you. But you can change that double click behavior by selecting any one of these other radio button options. You can also, if you need to, tell it to automatically display the List of Links dialog box on startup. So when you start MicroStation and the program runs, it'll also open the List of Links dialog box. So if you want that, you just turn that checkbox on, and then next time the program runs, it'll open the List of Links dialog box automatically. And at the bottom here, the info border is Symbology, which I showed you that you can display through the List of Links dialog box. This is the display for that info border. Again, it doesn't write this data to the files. It's just personal preference, how you want it to look. And you can change it whatever you want. It's totally fine. And with ProjectWise, so it creates, if you are working with ProjectWise, you can tell it to either create a link to the local file path. You have to be logged into your ProjectWise data source before you do your paste, by the way. Or you can say, create a link using the ProjectWise URL, either way. Then in this beta, there's an auto shapes beta, and that's for auto shapes in Excel. And I've played with this a little bit, but I'm not going to go into it since it's part of this is the major change in this particular beta. So because I haven't played with it a lot, not everybody has that particular beta yet. Now, a couple other things I'm going to point out here is this. Let's say you've got a paste and you don't know what settings was used for a particular paste that you're looking at, and you want to duplicate those settings for a new paste that you want to do. Let's say you could even say the scenario is you lost your settings file. What would you do in that scenario? Well, if you go back to the settings, what I'm going to do here, actually, I'm going to set my settings a certain way to show you how you use this. This is the match button. I'm going to show you how to use this. So first, I'm going to change my color of my text here to green, and then I'm going to go to my borders. I'm going to change their color to red, and their thickness to 3, and save that. Okay, now I'm going to do a new paste with those settings, and the reason why is just so I can show you dramatically how this match button works. So I copied that data and go back. Come on, MicroStation, there we go, and paste it. So when I zoom in, you'll see it's got the different colors for the text and lines. Now, if I go back and I restore my default settings, and save those, notice when I go to text, notice the symbology is there. None of them are turned on, and notice for borders, none of the symbologies are turned on either. So if I click Match Now, in the lower left, it's going to say Match Link Attributes Identify Element. So you click on the paste once again to confirm that, and now look at the settings. So it grabbed the settings from that paste and said this is the symbology that was used for the text, and for the borders, this is the symbology that was used there. So now, with this setting, I can go out and go save my settings file, say recovered settings, just give it a name here. And now I can use those settings that were recovered from that paste for new pastes that I want to do to match these settings for that particular paste. So that's how you'd use the match button. Again, you could use it just to duplicate the settings for one particular paste that you want to do, and you could also use it to grab settings and then save them out to create a new settings file to recover one maybe that you lost or something like that. All right, now I'm going to go out to disk here and I'm going to show you a couple other things. So first, I showed you where the sample files were, and I'll just go back down into Windows Explorer and show you that again before I go to another area here. So it's Program Data, Axiom. If you're using the MicroStation V8 version, it'll be in the V8 folder, and then Office sample files. So this path is the sample files for the V8 version. If you've got the Connect or V10 version, just go back up and you'll go to V10, Office, sample files, same sample files just for the V10 version. And then also, if I go back to MicroStation, if you need help in the program, so I went to the help file earlier where you go Settings, Help, Contents. This opens the settings file, and then here's the Quick Start Guide. But this settings file and the Quick Start Guide in PDF form and the entire help file in PDF form are also stored in another area on disk. So in this case, the V8 version of Microsoft Office Importer for MicroStation is installed in the Program Files x86 folder, Axiom, V8, Office. And then here's the help file that I just opened. And then here's the Quick Start Guide, which came from the documentation that the help file was created from. And then here's the documentation for the full documentation also, which the help file was formed from, but in PDF form as well. This is one area that you can use to get help for the program. And then for the V10 version, it's similar, except because it's a 64-bit program, it's installed under Program Files, Axiom, V10, Office. Here's the Quick Start Guide, and then here's the help file in PDF form, and then here's the help file itself. Now, also off the settings, if you go to Help, About, this opens a web page, and this gives you a couple of things. If you need support assistance, this will give you data that will help you. On the left-hand column, it gives you a bunch of data which will help support. It gives you the exact version of the program that you're running. It gives you the status of your license, whether it's a corporate license, single computer license, site license, organization license, that sort of thing. If you have a license that expires, it'll give you the expiration date of the license. It'll also give you the exact build date and time of the version of the program that you're using, and also where your license file is stored. On the right, it gives you our contact information. If you are an owner of a license of Microsoft Office Importer and you have active maintenance or support, then you can call here at this number and ask for support. You'll get right where you need to go. They'd be happy to help you. We have all of our technical division personnel are on support duty. So when you call, it would be extremely rare if you happen to not get a live person that would help you. Almost as mythical as unicorns, I would say. And then also underneath there, you'll see there's a knowledge base, which you can get data on the program. You can also create a new support ticket here. And the email address that I was referring to earlier is support@axiom.com. So if you click this and you send an email to support@axiom.com, it could be related to technical questions that maybe came up during this that you want to get more data on, or you just need help for the program, or you want to request that we look at updating the program to handle a certain thing better, that sort of thing. Or you need any help at all related to the program, you just click that and it automatically creates a support ticket. And our tech support personnel, everybody has access to that ticketing system, so they'd be able to help you. So now, again, Mike, related to the scaling of a text as size of border change or scale of drawing, I'm going to get that data to you in writing. And again, anybody that has any questions related to what I covered, and maybe I didn't cover something specific, or you think of something later, you can use that support@axiom.com email address, and we'd be happy to help you with any other questions that you might have. So, and everybody that attended this session, by the way, will get a video of this particular session. So if we have your email address, I'm pretty sure you will. Then once we pull down the video and check its audio, that sort of thing, you'll get a link to the video that you'll be able to share and get to others if you need and want, so that they can learn from what I showed you here today as well. So with that, thank you guys very much for attending. I really appreciate it. And with that, I'll let you go and have a good rest of your day. You're welcome.